Hello, you guys. Happy New Year. I know I have not seen or spoken to you since before the holidays, before the new year. Unfortunately, while the holidays are supposed to be a holly jolly time, I notice myself really spiraling mentally during that time of the year for a variation of reasons. First and foremost, the fact that I lost my sister Brianna to juvenile Huntington's disease back in 2020, so almost 2 years ago. And it's now been our second Christmas without her. And it doesn't get any easier. Just because you reminisce, you think about the things you would have done with them, what you would have bought her, how she would have reacted. Grief is an everlasting ghost, an emotion that just lingers over your life. And even though it's been 2 years, I am not by any means okay or over it. I'm just coming to terms with it and trying to find overall peace and understanding, but it doesn't just go away one day. You don't just wake up and go, okay, it's been this long, I'm gonna mark it off on the calendar, and it doesn't work like that. So anyway, I just wanted to come on here and give an update, talk about some really hard things mentally, emotionally, and just topics I want to cover. I actually wanted to talk about my mental health specifically, and then we had a crisis, a tragedy this past week, and so I'm kind of making it a twofold, addressing both my mental health and others. So I am going to be giving a trigger warning. These are heavier topics. However, if you do think you want to stay, that it'd be beneficial, I would love that if you feel that it is best for you. But I just want to be open with you guys. So back to the holidays not being good for me. So don't have my sister anymore. That makes it hard. The first time that I found out that my dad had been arrested and put in jail was on Christmas Eve when I was in high school. I went through a pretty traumatic breakup back in college over this time of the year as well. Just a lot of really hard things for me have happened over the winter holiday season. I was waiting for my Huntington's disease diagnosis back in 2016 to 2017, that time frame when I was a sophomore in college. I hit my lowest point of depression that I had ever experienced at that point in time, and it was really scary for me. So I just feel like my body goes into fight or flight mode every time this time of year creeps around. And so I see all of these YouTubers doing 12 days of Christmas, or the entire Vlogmas where they vlog the entire month. And every year I tell myself I'm gonna do all these Christmas covers, I'm gonna do vlogs, and I end up being so depressed. It can be really hard. And I am so immensely blessed, and I have so many things that I am so grateful for. I love my friends and my family, and the people I have in my life are truly a blessing. But despite that, that doesn't mean that there aren't things I still struggle with. I will never forget when I used to see my old therapist. She told me that along with my anxiety and depression, that I did have PTSD to an extent. And of course, when I heard her say that, I was like, this is only something that people who are in the military go through. My grandpa was one of them. But when you go through trauma in any extent, it can have lingering effects. So apparently my trigger is this time of the year. So now it is February, and I'm having a little bit more hope because spring is right around the corner. I definitely need some sunshine in my life. So I recently got diagnosed with OCD, and this was something I knew I had probably for at least a decade, for sure. But it was undiagnosed, and I would always make excuses. I thought a lot of the stuff I was doing was just normal until I realized it wasn't. I actually compiled a very lengthy list of OCD symptoms that I now know are for sure OCD. So with that being said, holidays not being a great time of the year, I should say like Christmas, New Year's, Thanksgiving, which I do love Thanksgiving a lot, but it's just the time frame it falls in. I noticed my mental health was really plummeting a lot. And I had only been on medication once 3 years ago, but it did not work well for me. I was on Lexapro, although it was supposed to be an antidepressant for my anxiety and my depression. My anxiety was great. It had lessened a lot, but my depression was so bad. I couldn't get out of bed. I was constantly sleeping. And these were side effects that I was told would minimize or completely go away after X amount of months, but that was not my experience. I felt like a shell of the person I used to be. And even though I was depressed before being on it, I figured that it was better than what I felt at that state. Cut that off cold turkey. Don't recommend that. Didn't realize how bad that is for you. Do not do that. I felt so incredibly down and just low and awful. And then I never wanted to go through it again. I had my sister, one of my sisters who is now a nurse. She was telling me for years that I needed to give something else a try because she went through many different medications and finally found something that worked for her. So as of today, she just texted me and said, I told you so, because I am on 2 medications now for my anxiety, depression, and OCD symptoms. I'm 3 weeks in, so I am finally starting to feel a difference. I am on Zoloft, and I'm gonna have to insert whatever other one it is. I can never pronounce it. There are some side effects, but overall I am feeling a lot better, which is great. I don't think you'll ever be cured of these or 100% perfect, but I'm making progress, and that's all I could ask for. I decided to see a psychiatrist back around the holidays when I was feeling very low. I noticed that when I had a week time frame where I was off of work, I thought I would be relaxing and having fun. My brain never shuts off, ever. I didn't realize that that wasn't normal, to have your brain constantly ruminating, dissecting, pulling things apart that either are non-existent or from very, very far in the past, or you're making up scenarios in your head. My brain is always in fight or flight mode and making me so high into my head and my anxiety. Again, didn't know that wasn't normal until I started reading more into OCD after I got diagnosed. But I sought help through a virtual app that I have through my insurance. I've been able to see a psychiatrist, and she was able to diagnose and medicate me. It took me reaching a really low point to reach out for help because I thought it was fine. I kept pushing it off, and I'm really glad I did. I'm glad I finally got the validation that I wasn't going crazy. I did have OCD. Now that I fell down the OCD rabbit hole, which I've learned digging through video after video after video to reassure yourself that what you're doing is in fact OCD. One of the people I watch on YouTube said that is a form of a compulsion. So with OCD, you have so much anxiety that you have to do something to alleviate that anxiety. Even if it's something that has never actually happened or come to fruition, even if it's 100% in your head, you have to alleviate that through a compulsion. So for some people, it's physical, you know, the stereotypical like washing your hands. For some people, it's cognitive. So like terrible intrusive thoughts, things that normal people would just dismiss. You get 50,000 thoughts is what they say in your head a day. Some of them are disturbing, some of them are random, some of them are weird. But people with OCD who struggle with intrusive thoughts, they can't let that go. They ruminate on it, they wonder why they had it, they internalize it, they assume that they're a bad person. And for OCD thinkers, that becomes an obsession, and they think that a thought is equivalent to an action and who they are as a person. And I have fallen into both categories, both the intrusive thoughts, the ruminating in my head, which I think is 10 times worse than my physical compulsions, but I also have a lot of physical compulsions as well. I started realizing that some of the things I did growing up were also OCD. The irony in it is I was going through this list, which I can go through with you momentarily, with my sister. And I am only saying this for genetic purposes, but I have 5 siblings total, minus, well, Brianna's no longer with us, but she is always going to be one of my siblings. So my only fully biological sister, Delaney, I was telling her about my diagnosis and my symptoms and how crazy I thought I was for a while. And she also said that she was diagnosed with OCD like a week after me. So we are almost like, I don't know, twins that got separated by 4 years. It's kind of scary at times how similar we are. This goes to show you that if you're in it and you have someone who's experiencing the same things, you might not know that you have OCD because your sister does the exact same things. So it's normal, you know? Doesn't everyone have a voice in their head that bullies them and tells them terrible things? Nope. I think one of my telling signs was when I was watching a TikTok and a woman on there was talking about the fact that there are people who have absolutely no voices in their head. They think about what's directly in front of them. They don't like have ruminating thoughts. They only are thinking, you know, I'm looking at my couch, I'm watching this TV show, I'm doing the dishes. They're not constantly like thinking of the past or the future or making things up or, you know, just going through all this. And I went, oh, that's alarming because I don't know a time my brain has ever really fully shut off. So, OCD. So I have compiled a nice list of all of my OCD habits I could think of, but I will probably come up with more. And I've learned laughing is a huge coping mechanism of mine. My psychiatrist told me that. We had an hour-long session. I laughed the first half of it. And she said, you know, you're so optimistic, you're so peppy for someone who's going through so much. And then I just started crying, and I cried the last 30 minutes of our hour-long session. So it is a coping mechanism with all the things I went through growing up. That's how I learned to cope, was to repress and smile and be strong, because that's what I had to do for so long. So there's actually someone who commented on my Huntington's disease video about my diagnosis. And they said, I don't get why she's laughing. This is so serious. And I'm not laughing throughout the whole video, but part of it I'm laughing. And that is 1000% a coping mechanism. I start with laughter before I'm gonna cry most times. So just to throw that out there. But some of these are minor, but some of these are kind of dramatic. So when I lock my car, I have to lock it a certain amount of times, typically 3 to 5, and I have to hear it. It drives everyone around me insane, but I have to do it. I check all my locks all the time before I leave the house. And it's like to a dramatic degree. You know, most people when they lock the door, they'll like check and walk away. My mom does that. She like checks one time and walks away. For me, I could check 20, 30, 40 times and it still won't be enough, because as soon as I do it, my brain goes, but did you really? And I don't know how to explain it, but my brain truly, truly believes when that voice is telling me I didn't actually do it, that they're telling the truth. So when I used to live at home with my parents, their door, I would always leave out the back door through the garage, because I had to take a picture of the front door that it was locked. Because if I exited through that door and locked it, I had no photo evidence so that I could stop checking the locks. When I was in college, when I moved back home, it would take me an extra 20 minutes to leave for class. And my college was literally like less than 10 minutes from where my parents lived. And it would take me 20 minutes of just going back and forth between my car and the door, because I'd get in the car and then I'd go, did I really lock it? And even now, living in my own house, I still do the same thing. I never leave out the front door, because I will do the same thing, the compulsion, over and over. So at least now I can take a picture and exit the garage. With that being said, my psychiatrist asked about if I check the stove, the oven, all of that before I go. I not only check, I have to take pictures of the entire house before I leave. Yeah, it adds on like an extra 20 minutes to every single morning when I leave on the weeks I go to the office. And anywhere I go, I have to like plan ahead an extra 30 minutes. I take pictures of every lock, windows, the doors, anything that's hot or could catch on fire, because my brain tells me if I don't, someone's gonna break in, if not everything's locked, or if I have the furnace, you know, I don't know, if the furnace is too hot, or if I leave the dryer on, the house is gonna burn down, my dogs are gonna die. Like, I always have these extreme case scenarios in the forefront of my mind. So I just take pictures of every crevice of my house, every outlet. I have to take a picture of every outlet because I'm worried if I leave something plugged in, like a charger, that my house is gonna catch on fire. I literally have like 50 pictures every day when I get to work that I then have to go and delete. If I could, I would probably have a camera in every single room, house, in every single corner just to alleviate that. But again, that's another excessive compulsion. Oh, I check my alarm also about 12 times before I go to bed at night. I have the same alarm set all the time. They are automatically populated. I have a timer as well, but I have to check them like 12 times. I'll check, I'll lock my phone, I'll see the alarm set and the timer, and then I lay down. And then that voice in my head goes, you didn't set them. You need to check. You need to get up and check. What if you didn't set them and you don't wake up on time? And then you're gonna lose your job. Your boss is gonna fire you. You're gonna have no money. You're not gonna be able to pay your bills. You're not gonna be able to pay your student debt. Like, literally, this is how my mind works with everything. It's always worst case scenario, and that voice in my head is constantly bullying me. So then I'll get up, I'll check the alarms again. I'll count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 alarms that make sure all the green buttons are on my iPhone. I make sure they all say AM, and then I go through and make sure that they're all the right time. I do that, and again, like an extra 20 minutes to my night. And then I feel so much anxiety until I can finally go to bed. And most times I have to say a prayer and ask Jesus to literally alleviate the constant fear from me. It's real fun. It's real fun. Oh, I even take pictures of bills for, if they're not on my credit card, different like city bills and stuff for utilities. I will take pictures of the envelope and the check and everything just because I'm worried that they're gonna say I never paid it and I'm gonna have to have proof. I don't know if that one's more like, I don't know if that's normal. It's probably not, but yeah, so I do that too. Again, the intrusive thoughts, I touched on that a bit, but they are intrusive. They're abstract, they're ridiculous. I've been told that they make you feel so uncomfortable because they attack things that you actually care about, but your brain's trying to convince you that you could be a terrible person and do terrible things to everyone and everything you love and care about. And it's just a way to get you to continually ruminate, think, stress, and try to reason with your brain on every reason why your brain is wrong. You constantly have a bully in your brain. That's literally what OCD is living. It's like living with OCD. So for some people it's harm OCD, like they see a kitchen knife or something that, and they're cutting a fruit, I don't know, cutting something, and this thought comes in their head and they're like, what if one day I like hurt someone with this, like hurt my family or something? And of course, most people would dismiss it, but people with OCD are more likely to sit there and think about it and go, oh my gosh, I can never use a knife again. I can never be around a knife. I'm never gonna, purchase anything sharp again. You sit there and you fester over it, and it really bugs every part of your core. And it starts to really make you think that there's actually something wrong with you, when in fact your brain is just playing games with you. But it's so exhausting. I was trying to explain my OCD symptoms to my new therapist, and she said, wow, it sounds like your day mentally is so draining that by the time you get home, you have to be like mentally and physically exhausted. I would just pass out. And I said, yeah, that's the struggle, is my brain is constantly running. And so then physically, I'm also tired. My big one that I still struggle with, like all of these, but my big one that I've struggled with for at least a decade, I started doing this probably in middle school or high school. A big compulsion for me when I start to feel myself getting a panic attack, or I feel my anxiety building up. I know it drives everyone in my family nuts because they all know I do it, but I will take my hair, and I'm trying not to do it my best because, on a side note, the lighting in here is not very good, but I did get highlights. I am pretty blonde up top. I don't have extensions in right now, so that's probably why I look naked to a lot of you who watch the channel. Still looking for extensions that match nonetheless. So I will take my hair, because I remember my former hairstylist telling me that split ends are bad, and they're the reason why I had to lose so much hair at one point, was because my split ends were so bad. I would straighten my hair every day. I went through that phase where, you know, like 2008 middle school and high school, I was in middle school, but everyone would straighten their hair every single day. Why? I don't know, but I burned the crap out of my hair. So I learned split ends are bad. And of course, with my OCD, it's like an obsession. Bad, get rid of, no good. So I would sit, I still do, it's really bad. If my anxiety is that bad, I will sit and either, if I don't have scissors, I will sit there and pick my split ends. Now, mind you, I know fully well that it's not any better. It's actually worse to do them with your fingers, but there's that side of my brain I cannot shut off. Like, I literally feel like I'm going to explode if I see a split end and I can't get rid of it, because it's something that's bad, it's something that's wrong. And so that's my compulsion. I cut it or I pluck it. And so I talked to my psychiatrist about that as well, because some people have skin picking or hair pulling, and I told her it's not actual pulling, it's cutting and getting rid of. I'm not proud of it. At one point, my sister, who now also has OCD, bought me salon scissors so that at least when I was cutting my split ends, it would be a better, you know, than using just any old pair of scissors. But it's not good. I know it's not good. And I know actual salon professionals, you know, they're constantly cleaning and sharpening them. And I'm really trying to get better. But honestly, most days, if I don't have my extensions in, because at that point I know that most of the hair that you're seeing is fake, so the compulsion like minimizes. I don't know how to explain it, but when it's my natural hair, I almost always want to pull it. So that's why, like 9 times out of 10, when I'm going to work, the gym, you know, day-to-day things where I'm not singing or doing a pageant appearance, I almost always have my hair up in a bun or in a ponytail, because I can't pick it. So the other terrible thing with OCD is when you get so bad into your compulsions or your rumination, you get to the point where you just want to isolate yourself, because you're worried about what people will think, or if you would potentially, you know, do any of these things that your brain is convincing you that you know you're a bad person. And it gets very lonely. Until I realized a lot of the things that were going on were OCD, I felt very much alone. And talking to my sister after she got diagnosed made me feel a lot better, because we go through a lot of the same things. I just talked to one of my Miss Michigan, Miss America pageant sisters on her podcast she has on Instagram Live. And we talked about that, because she also has mental health issues that have like voices in her head and things like that. And so I felt a lot better knowing that. I literally thought there was something wrong with me, but I have OCD. So I am different, but I am not alone. God, this is going to be such a long video. I haven't even gotten into our second topic yet. Again, fear of saying or doing something harmful. Okay, this one's really harmless, but I love my Skittles to be, when I have Skittles, I don't eat them often, but they were my favorite candy as a kid, aside from Twix. I wanted one of every color. Again, that's very minimal, but like I would literally spend all the time making sure I had one of each flavor, all 5. And then when I got to the bottom and I didn't have one of each, I would get really anxious. It's really stupid. Another big misconception is that OCD is 100% just cleanliness, obsessive cleaning disorder, but that's not the case. Some people do. But 9 times out of 10, there are dozens of other versions of OCD that people don't understand. And for people who have these compulsions, it's very debilitating. It's not something to be taken lightly. You know, cleaning, yeah, I mean, I guess it might be a bonus if you have that, but for me, a lot of the things I do, I'm embarrassed about. I feel like I would be judged. I feel like there was something wrong with me before I got diagnosed. And the amount of times that I've just sat in isolation because of them is awful. And so I wouldn't wish that on anyone. So please just be mindful of that. It's not something to be jealous of, and not all of us have cleanliness. I get anxiety when I am around a mess. However, 9 times out of 10, due to either life, work, busyness, or my anxiety and depression that I also have, my house isn't clean. I would like it to be clean, but it's not always clean. And I do feel some anxious feelings when it isn't. But if I am depressed and tired, I don't really give a crap what my house looks like. I just want to lay in bed. So don't assume that's not by any means all that OCD is. This one seems harmless, but I realize that I do things sometimes in numbers. So like when I pet my dogs, I have to make sure I pet them. This is so silly. I have to pet them the same amount, and I have to count. So I'll be like, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I don't know. I do that with certain things, and I didn't realize that I will literally count in my head to make sure I do it the same amount of number. And that's, again, a little more minor, but still. So mentally going over your actions to make sure that you didn't actually do something. So for instance, if you're on a Zoom call for work or something, and you know that you're muted, you know that your camera's on or off, but your brain convinces yourself that you said something inappropriate, that you just cussed out loud in front of everyone, and you just don't remember it. And then you start to sit there and think. I've had this happen to me. And I saw someone else make a TikTok compilation of all these different things that she's had happen to her, and that was one of them. So that made me feel a lot less alone. Another one that my sister and I both have, that I've heard other people now in different OCD support groups I'm in, again, fear that you did or said something bad and you don't remember it. So I've had a couple different instances where I was driving to work on the weeks I work in the office. I'm bi-weekly in and out from home in the office. And there's a mom and a son who go to the bus stop every morning during the school year because he gets on the bus to go to school. And I always am so slow. I pay attention. There's not a lot of lighting in the neighborhood, so I always try and make sure that when I'm leaving, I watch out for them. But there have been multiple times, and the first time it happened, I literally felt my heart sink because I was like, what is wrong with me? And of course, having Huntington's disease and not having any symptoms that I'm aware of yet, of course, having these OCD thoughts freak me out because I don't know if it's Huntington's or if it's my just overall mental health. So nonetheless, I drive by the mom and the son. I see them. I wave at them every morning when I see them. And I drive off. And all of a sudden my brain goes, you just ran over them. I think I maybe hit a little bump or something. And it said, you ran over them. You didn't stop, you ran away, it's gonna be on the news, you just murdered someone, how could you do that? You're gonna have to go back. You have to go back and make sure you didn't hurt them. And again, I'm the other sane part of my brain is telling this bully side of my brain, that's ridiculous. You would have felt it. Your whole car would have rocked. You would have heard screaming. You would have had to have stopped. There's no way you would have not known. But then of course the other side of my brain's like, nope, go back and check. So I'm on my way to work. I already passed them. I already get to this four-way stop sign. I'm on my merry way. And I literally had to turn around. And I pulled into my driveway just close enough to where I could see the mom after she had walked her son walking back to their house, and then left. Again, totally deterring my day, my morning. I had to do this, and now thankfully I wasn't late for work, but I could have been. It's just these extra steps that get so frustrating that I have to do throughout the day that makes little things seem so big. This next one was one that really freaked me out because it's the one that I remember doing as a kid. And I remember within recent adult years thinking, I know I've done this my whole life for as long as I can remember. And it's so weird. It's something I just did as a kid and I thought I would outgrow, but I haven't. And I thought it was so ridiculous until I watched a video that it's called Magical Thinking OCD. And it's basically like a superstitious end of it where you believe if you don't do something, something terrible is going to happen, which at its core, that's basically what OCD is. And that's why we have compulsions. But this one is, you know, the whole, like, if you step on a crack, you'll break your mama's back. It's that extreme. So if you don't do, I mean, I would be like on the playground and I would hear like, you know, if you don't, I don't know, jump this many times on the jump rope, or if you don't go this far on the monkey bars, if you don't go down the slide this many times, just really stupid things. Your mom's gonna die, or your dad's gonna get hit by a bus, your sister's gonna fall off a cliff. Things that have absolutely no correlation, but I would immediately get freaked out and I would do whatever my brain was saying what I had to do to avoid this happening. And it still has carried into my adult life. Like, just again, stupid things like if you don't get the microwave before the buzzer goes off, or if you don't flush the toilet a certain amount of times, and ridiculous things, again, that have no correlation, but it's like all of a sudden I go into fight or flight. I don't want anything bad to happen to my family. And as a Christian, I always try and take a moment and pray, because I know that at the end of the day, any type of bad thing is in God's hand. And why would I think I have anything to do with my family's time on this planet? But my brain still tries to tell me that I do. If I don't do these compulsions, it's telling me. And again, I thought that was one that no one would ever do this. Like, that has no correlation, but OCD. Okay, and then the last couple were just, you know, again, my brain never shuts off, ever. And when I am fixated on something that my brain can't solve, it's so scary. You feel like you're in a different reality, because that's on loop on your brain all the time. So it doesn't matter if you're, you know, is the moment that your feet hit the ground, you're thinking about it, because your brain says this is an unsolved problem. You're moving throughout your day, you're doing laundry, you're going to work, you're trying to maybe watch TV to distract yourself, read a book. The whole time your brain is at the forefront, surpassing everything in your presence. And that's terrifying. It just feels like you start to detach from reality. And it's amazing and also terrifying about how powerful your brain is. So I really am going to try to have some more mindfulness practices so that I can try to gain more control over my brain, because for so long I've let it run and not know what it was doing. It shouldn't be. And then the other one, which this one's a little more minor, and I don't know if it's 100% OCD, but I have a hard time asking for help, like relinquishing control, I guess, to an extent. And that's not even, I don't know, it's like and again, this might just be trauma responses, but I just have a hard time trusting that people will get things done in the way that I like them. And so therefore I will put more pressure on myself to do a million things rather than outsourcing, getting resources, asking for help, you know, dividing and conquering. I try to like bottle it up and do it all myself, because I'm so convinced that like something terrible is going to happen if I try and ask for help. Again, don't know if that's 100% OCD, but it is something I struggle with. And I wanted to this video is already so long. So if you're still watching, thank you for hanging in there. I just wanted to bring this to your attention, or at least, you know, get it out there for maybe someone it would help, because like when I got diagnosed with Huntington's and I put that video out there about 2 years ago, I've had so many of you that have reached out to me, whether it's in the comments or on Instagram, and just said how much that video meant to you, because you had, you know, someone in your family, a friend, yourself, you know, are going through this and you felt so alone. You didn't know what to look for, what you were feeling. And a lot of you have been asking for updates and things like that, which I am planning on doing an update video, because my 5-year anniversary of my diagnosis is in May, which is also Huntington's disease month. But I just try my best to be very open on here, and hopefully maybe someone who is suffering from something like OCD, anxiety, depression can relate to this video as well. And you know, I try to be very diligent about, I need to be uploading, and you know, the YouTube algorithm's going to be mad at me if I take breaks. And but mentally, I just, you know, even though I'm not any big creator with a huge following, sometimes it still is draining, because I just, you know, I'm constantly battling my mental health. It's been something that's been an uphill battle for me my whole life. And so sometimes I just, you know, get waves of depression and my OCD now. And there's just days or weeks where I'm fighting to get out of bed. I'm fighting to keep my routine going. And so sometimes literally just sending a text message feels like it takes everything out of me. I was having that conversation with one of my best friends recently, because we both suck at texting each other back in a timely manner. And I told her, I said, you know, it's fine. This is my lowest point in the year every year. And I said, sometimes it literally takes everything out of me just to do a text. And she said, no, I feel the same way. I 100% get it. Just know I'm here for you. And we always know that even if we don't get back to each other right away, we are here. We do love each other. And so I just want to also talk about the fact that again, you've probably heard this a million times at this point, but social media isn't real. It's a highlight reel. And what you see is not who someone is. It's 1% of their entire life. And they are putting out their best version of themselves 99% of the time. It's a sliver of an entire pie. And, you know, there's more to every person than what meets the eye. And even if you are physically in a room with someone, you're connected, even sometimes if you're close to someone, you still never know what's going on behind closed doors. So I had been planning on making this video for about a month since I got my diagnosis and started my meds. And in that time frame, we heard about the passing of Cheslie Kryst, former Miss USA 2019. And it's been over a week now. But although I didn't know Cheslie personally, I felt very rocked by this. As someone who has been at very low points before, where in the midst of waiting to receive my diagnosis, when my sister was incredibly ill and I was going through a lot of trials and tribulations 5 years ago, that was the lowest I'd ever felt. And so as someone who has been at points where I've not wanted to be here, although I've never actually attempted or carried out a attempt, it hit hard, because I know that there have been times where I've just not felt like I had a purpose or a reason to be here. And although I, for the most part, am in a much better place now, there's people who have also felt that way and don't share it, because that doesn't go with your Instagram aesthetic, you know? The internet's pretty superficial for the most part, and we all contribute to it. It's natural in a sense, because that's what we've been taught. That's what we see all the time. And you get this sense of, I don't want there to be anything wrong with me. You know, fear of missing out. I want to show everyone how great life is. And sometimes I almost feel like we say these things to ourselves because we're hoping internally that maybe if we project a certain image, we'll also feel that way internally. Like if I project I have the perfect life, maybe I will manifest it, but that's not reality. And so with Cheslie, she took her own life at her New York apartment. She leapt from her apartment, and even though I didn't know her, I knew that there's a side in myself and maybe a lot of other of you listening who have felt that way at some point. And it just goes to a bigger conversation of what mental health looks like. And the truth is, there is nothing that it looks like. It looks like everything. Mental health looks like what you would think it would, where someone is low and you can tell. But a lot of times you can't. And that's what's really scary. And with Cheslie, no one expected it. And that's why it rocked everyone so hard, because everyone thought that her life was one way, but in reality, that was just what she was displaying. She was Miss USA, and a lot of times, people think that you were a pageant queen. You have to have it all figured out, but that's far from reality. And I've seen so many posts that have really just upset me, because they have said, she was beautiful. She was Miss USA. She was an extra TV host, a model, an attorney. She was incredibly, incredibly brilliant in so many different ways. She did pro bono work for people who couldn't afford an attorney. She worked on social justice issues. How could she take her own life? Every time she was in conversations, she seemed so happy. But that's the thing. Just because you fit a mold and you are achieving and you fit a beauty definition, it doesn't mean that you're immune to depression, suicidal thoughts, anxiety, any mental health issues. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter how many awards, trophies, crowns. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, if there's a void, no amount of accolades will fill that hole. That's something that you really have to work through on a spiritual, emotional basis with yourself, a therapist, God, if you're religious. And I think we've come a long way, but we still have so much further to go, because the fact that there were so many people that were implying foul play goes to show that we don't understand how mental illness works. It doesn't look a certain way. And that's the whole point. There are people who are crying for help in silence. Check in on your friends. Let them know you love them. Sometimes you might not know what to say. Just let them know you're there to listen. When I got diagnosed with Huntington's, there were a lot of people in my life who had no idea what I was going through. There were a lot of people who were. A lot of my friends who are in the HD community knew, for the most part, pretty close to what I was going through, and they could relate. We could talk on a very parallel level. But with other friends who didn't, just the fact that they reached out and said, you know what, if you need an ear, I'm here. If you want to cry, I have a shoulder. Sometimes it's not about what you say. It's just about what you do. Being there. Showing up when no one else will. Showing up when you think they're fine. They're strong. They've got it all together. And Cheslie had quotes that came out since she passed talking about that very thing, that her social media is a highlight reel, and that she does struggle with depression and mental health issues, that she was constantly trying to eat well, and she saw a therapist. She was trying to exercise a lot to help those things, and I myself try to do all of those as well, but that doesn't mean it erases it. And her family ended up coming out and saying that she did have high functioning depression. So it just is another conversation about what that looks like. Just because someone is smiling, operating, doesn't mean that they don't have a hole in their heart or dark thoughts in their head. And that narrative, that idea of being immune to something because you have other things that idea is so far from reality. And as a society, I think that that's part of the reason why we chase after so many things. And Cheslie also had a quote on that to a degree, where she talked about chasing, accolades in sports and pageantry and in her career, and how it was always what's next, what's next, what's next. It was never enough to fill that void. And I myself have been guilty of that ever since I was a kid and going through traumatic situations. I always thought to myself, there's something I can do, I can control. It might not be my house, it might not be my family, but I can be really good at stuff I do. So I wanted to be the best student. I wanted to be the best at what I want, cheerleading. Maybe I wasn't very great at other athletics, but I wanted to be the best with cheerleading. Then I wanted to put my body in the best shape possible. So I started weight training and dieting really hard. And on another note, that's another, sometimes I think OCD thing was, as much as I love working out and eating well, at some point I did think that I was a bit all or nothing obsessive. So that's a whole nother topic. But I wanted to be the best at music. I taught myself guitar. I started doing the pageants, and I wanted the crowns, and I wanted to feel like I was constantly doing enough and being enough and achieving enough. And I'm proud of everything I've done, and I wouldn't take it back, but I do also feel like there was a void for a little girl I was trying to fill for so long. And I resonate with so much of Cheslie and what she was going through and the things that have come out that she said. I think a lot of us feel like we're that girl in a sense. But Cheslie, at the end of the day, felt like she had no one or no hope. And that breaks my heart. I really still haven't figured out how to process it. And man, just be kind to yourself, be kind to others. You never know what walk of life someone else is going through behind closed doors. You don't know what kind of weight they have on their shoulders. They might have the weight of the world on their shoulders. They might be all that is keeping their family or someone they love together. And sometimes it could be those really little things. It might be a smile or a wave to a stranger, or just treating someone with kindness. I always, I'm not perfect, but I always try my best to, when I'm in public, especially with strangers, be extra kind, because especially in these times we're going through with COVID and work shortage, different things, I never want to put extra negativity or stress onto someone. So, showing your waiters or waitresses extra appreciation, a good tip. I was in the Starbucks line this morning and sparking up conversation with a gentleman at the drive-through window, and he said, you're an exceptionally kind and optimistic customer. And I remember I pulled away and I thought, is that not normal? It's Starbucks, so I can only imagine, but the fact that the kind customer is the anomaly, it's the outlier, that was telling to me. And I know that these might seem like little things, but sometimes someone seeing someone actually smile, notice them, do one kind act might be the thing that gives them a reason to hang on, to keep going, to try one more day, to give life a chance. So before you make judgments, before you assume that they need your kindness. And in the times that we're in, kindness could cure a lot in the world. A lot of the things going on or dark and scary and confusing, but we can control how we treat other people. And I know that Cheslie will be remembered for all of the incredible things that she was, and in the short time she was here, those 30 years, she left an impeccable mark on the world. I didn't even personally know her, but here I am talking about her because I truly felt moved by her. As soon as she won Miss USA, I was like, this girl has so much grit and ambition. She's beautiful, she's kind, she's compassionate, and I followed her journey. I just found her so incredible and poised. Even just seeing her on social media or in interviews, she just lit up a room. And so even though I don't know her on a personal basis, I did feel like, I knew her and I knew her heart. And a lot of the pageant community, even though I technically have never competed in the Miss USA organization, anyone worldwide felt the impact, but especially the pageant community, because I know that there's a lot of women who, again, have felt like Cheslie, in the fact that it's never enough what they're doing, how they're acting. And even with Cheslie, as perfect as we all thought she was, I saw a lot of videos come up about how many people were bullying her online and saying horrific things in different pageant Facebook groups, on her Instagram feed. And when those comments start to add up, unfortunately, for every kind, compassionate comment you get, those really ugly ones tear you down 10 times harder, and they linger. So just use your power of your words and your emotions for good. Leave an impact on people. A little kindness goes a long way, but never assume you know the full story, because everyone is struggling with something. And it's a shame. I'm praying for Cheslie's friends and family. I texted my mom right when it happened, and I remember my mom texting me back and saying her mom is never going to be the same again. And when I've had meetings with therapists or psychiatrists, when I was in my darker spots, they would always ask me, like, what keeps you going? And every single time it's definitely my family. And again, that hurt me when I heard my mom say that, because when I was at my lowest point back in college at Belmont, my roommate at the time did tell my mom that she was really worried about me and my well-being, and whether or not I was good enough to stay at school, like what I could potentially end up doing. And my mom was very worried about me, and she almost pulled me out halfway through the school year. I ended up finishing out before I moved back home and finished out my degree here. But once I found out that my mom and my roommate were talking and that my mom was that worried about me, when she texted me back about Cheslie's situation, I immediately thought, oh my gosh, like, my mom's worried about that. And it never happened for me, but I just can't imagine. And Cheslie's not to blame. Cheslie was carrying something that we all had no idea. And I'm really praying for her family and her, that, she's dancing with Jesus, that she has relief from whatever was bonding her down here on the world, on the earth. But my thoughts and prayers are with her and her family during this time. I pray that God gives them some kind of peace and healing. I can't imagine. I really can't, because with my sister, I'm still grieving. I'm still traumatized, but I knew her time was coming to an end. So I was able to have closure. I was able to say goodbye. I was able to hold her as she passed. But they didn't have that closure. And I've always said it's not a competition as far as, you know, whose trauma is worse, but to give me peace when my sister passed, I kept saying, you know, at least I know, at least I'm here. I'm with her. That's more than most people get. So I can't imagine having a sudden phone call and knowing that you didn't get to say what you wanted, and, you know, anything that you were planning on doing it's gone. It's just a whole different dynamic, and the trauma and grief my family's experienced, I can't imagine that being on a different level. So, but aside from that, anyone watching, if you've, again, made it this far, be the kind of person that you would want others to be to you. Be kind to yourself and to the world, but just know you're not alone. And if any of this was helpful, me talking to a camera by myself for an hour about all of the things I've been struggling with for a long time. When I got diagnosed with both Huntington's, I looked for videos. I didn't find very many testimonies, which is why I made my video. And when I got diagnosed with OCD officially, I started just diving into the internet and trying to find videos to see if what I was going through had, you know, other relations to different parts of OCD that I wasn't aware of. And I found other testimonies so helpful. So I wanted to come on here and share now my OCD story, but just an overarching testimony about mental health and a tribute to Cheslie's life, because life is short, and we have to tell our loved ones we love them every single day. I always never try to leave any of my family or friends at an argument or a bad place. Even if I'm upset or having a conflict with someone, I always try to tell them I love them at the end of the day, because probably one of the better parts of my OCD is that's always in the back of my brain. Like, what if something happens to them and this is how I ended it? I would never forgive myself. So I always try to end with a good night, I love you, I'm praying for you, you know, you mean the world to me. And yeah, just know you're not alone. And I'm praying for each and every one of you that you find healing for whatever you are going through. Hey everyone, present day Shelby here. Just wanted to touch base since I am posting this video that I filmed 2 months ago. I've been on my medication now for about 3 months on the sertraline, which is Zoloft, and the lamotrigine, and I'm finally starting to feel a lot better. That doesn't mean that I'm perfect or every day's great. There are still lots of ups and downs, especially with now being the anniversary of my sister's passing. Just, you know, life is still going to hit hard, but you keep getting up and fighting back. And now I have something to help aid me in that fight. So there is no shame in asking for help, whether it's therapy, medication, anything. So be strong. You've got this.